I always try to decide what sexuality and gender my pets are, and
fair.
some of them are definitely queer.
For sure.
I feel like they would be my favourite queer icons. Hi, I'm Leah. I use they, them pronouns.
Hi, I'm Zoe. I use she, they pronouns.
Hi, I'm Winona and I use she, her pronouns.
And hi, my name is Grace and I use she, her pronouns, and we're talking about our experiences as young people in the LGBTIQA+ community.
So how do you identify within the LGBTIQA+ community?
When I was 14, I realised that I identified as bisexual. I'm also cool with the term pansexual.
Yeah.
I really don't mind. And then later in life, I say later in life, I'm so old. I think around the time I was 18, I think I might be asexual. So a bit of soul searching and I went, hell yeah, that's me.
For me, I've never really put a label on anything. I'm just sort of going with the flow. It was, as a kid, I was like, well, not straight, that's for sure. You know what, that's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've never really labelled myself. I just sort of roll with it.
I would definitely say I identify most with pansexuality, but because I remember hearing the term and I was just like, and like reading the definition and I was like, yeah, that's it. Like, I don't really mind about gender. I just want to fall in love with the person. And then I also did a little bit of gender searching for a bit. I'm not sure where I fully land. I think the last time I was looking, I was like, she, they fits really well, and I feel like demigirl is kind of the vibe, but I also don't know how I sit fully with that. But yeah, I stumbled upon the term because I Googled what do people who use she, they pronouns identify as? Classic, thanks Google. Being called a woman or using just she, her pronouns just doesn't sit fully right with me. And I think demigirl allows that, like, you know, there's a little bit else going on there. And there's, you know, it's not just straight female. And I think that really was where I was like, yeah, that sounds about right for me.
I also identify as either demisexual or demi-romantic, and I feel like that's sort of a tricky label to figure out because it can take so much time for you to be able to have a connection with someone that you go, oh, actually I am demisexual and I'm not just asexual sort of blanket. And I think a lot more people are asexual than they might realize.
100%.
I think the distinction between demisexuality and demi-romanticism is still quite blurry, and I'm still trying to figure out where I might fit in between those. And I think it gets quite murky between what is sexuality and what is romantic attraction. And I think, to be honest, sometimes it's sort of like a self-definition, and sometimes I find labels really meaningful when other people explain what they are, because it's sort of you know, how much time and effort they've put into sort of exploring what that means for them.
Yeah.
It feels like a really precious thing to be able to you know, connect on that level of having to explore something like sexuality or gender so deeply.
Yeah.
So I think we should chat about our journeys. Zoe, I'm really interested to hear about yours.
Yeah, well, mine's really new and recent. I would say probably during COVID, I was like, I'm feeling I was seeing so much more queer representation, and I was in group chats and I was listening and talking to young people explain how they've gone through exploring themselves, and I was like, I think I really want to do that. I really want to understand myself better. So I took some time, and just I think having those conversations with friends and family and in those chats really helped me explore that, and seeing a bit more queer representation and searching things up really helped. And I think that's my journey. It's still going.
For myself personally, I knew when I was a lot younger than before I even said anything. Chose a really interesting time to come out and find my girlfriend during the same-sex marriage plebiscite.
Ooh.
Interesting times.
That would have been,
It was a lot. It was a lot, to be honest. It really was. But seeing, you know, when the yes vote came through and seeing that celebrated, I was like, hey, I think it's time to actually speak about it.
I discovered myself also at an interesting time, just before the marriage equality plebiscite. I think it would have been maybe 9 months before I started going, I think I might be gay, I think I might be bisexual. And then I found myself, coming out at that time. I felt a lot of pressure to come out because of the things I was hearing. And I'm glad I did. I'm very proud of the steps I took. But then it was starting uni, I just went, everyone else is dating and everyone else is in relationships. Why don't I feel that need? Like, I didn't feel lonely. I didn't feel like I was missing out on anything. I was just happy hanging out with my cat playing video games. That was the perfect Friday night for me. That's when I started, talking to some older queer people who mentored me. And I went, oh, there's asexuality. I think that's me.
It was sort of after high school, when I wasn't like in that sort of small community, that I was like able to think about that more, and like it wouldn't be dangerous for me to, accept who I was, or even explore gender and sexuality. But I remember like even in primary school, I'd be like, oh, people seem to be like having crushes. I guess I should just like pick one.
Yeah.
And that one. I'll be like, yeah, that's my crush.
Yeah.
They are good at sports, so that's why I picked them.
Yeah. I way too hard. It's like picking a Pokemon.
Yeah. And so it was like not until later that I realized, oh, that's not what people do.
No. Yeah.
Like people genuinely have these like crushes. Yeah.
Why?
That's why it makes so much sense when I was like, oh, like demisexuality, because like makes sense why I like haven't felt like crushes to people, and I just like would pick one at random.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think coming out of a small town and being able to like actually have space to like be safe to think about that was like one of the major like points in my journey.
So thinking back, like I know now there's a lot of queer media out there and there's a lot of representation, but is there anything in specific that helped you with your journey, like any books, any representation? For me, my main thing is music. Like no matter what it is, I connect with music in every sense of the word. But there's like specific artists that I look back on and I'm like, wow, you really sort of shaped the person that I am. And I know that sounds really dramatic, but it's true. Like there's a song by a band called Winona. I remember listening to that in my little Toyota Corolla, driving around town, and like this was before I was entirely accepting of myself and still very, very early on in that journey. And I was like, you know what? There is going to be that hope somewhere along the line. And I was like, they really shaped me as a like young queer person. And a lot of the people that they like collab with are queer or anything like that. I'm like, yes, Nuna, Fletcher, Hayley Kiyoko, G-Flip as an Australian example. I love them. And just the fact that they provide representation just by being themselves.
I think shout out to ABC Queer. I think they do awesome content, and it's nice to just read stories from everyday people, because I think that is breaking stereotypes. And I think this is going to sound really cheesy, but for me it was going to Headspace. But having a place where I could learn in a safe environment where I wouldn't be looked at as different or outside the norm. It was a really lovely, safe environment for me to be myself and to, learn things without wondering if people were looking at me.
I think the only other thing that I wanted to touch on is those like TV shows that have been coming up, like Heartstopper and Heartbreak High and those kind of things. Really nice to be able to see that representation. Yeah. There's so much more that can be done, but seeing it, especially coming to like mainstream media, like especially Heartbreak High as an Australian example, like that really must be so impactful for so many people, like especially myself. Like I think about it, and even thinking of like the concerts that I've been to that are queer artists, that's probably the safest place I've ever felt. Like concerts are my safe space anyway, but being in a space where I'm like looking at my girlfriend being like, I can hold your hand here, and that's so okay. That feels so great to me. I'm just really thankful for the like representation that people provide for being themselves, or just in general in media. Like it's really impactful. So thinking back to when you first started questioning your sexuality or gender, what advice would you give to your younger self?
I think I'd just try and say like learn as much as you can. Sometimes it's hard to find resources unless you like know a lot of queer people and you can find those. But I'd say like one thing that really helped me is like understanding performative gender and what that means. There's like a whole article, I think Judith Butler wrote it, and that was like just hearing the word like performative gender, like I was like, oh my god, like gender really is a performance to me. Like I felt like I was sort of performing a woman, but it didn't really fit with me, it didn't really feel right, and it felt very constrained to me. And so I'd say like just try and learn as much as you can, because there are lots of things and they have, you know, people have written about them, and it's, you know, finding that information can be really helpful.
Thinking back to younger me, I just want to say where you are isn't where you're going to stay. It's okay to think about it, and if you don't feel like talking about it or expressing it, that's totally fine too. Like you'll get to a place where you're feeling much more comfortable, and it is still a journey, but we'll get there.
I would say it's okay to ask questions, and that there is no such thing as a dumb question. Yeah, I've always felt very nervous asking, you know, what does this mean? You know, how do I feel about this? It took me a long time to feel comfortable to, start searching and teaching myself. And also, that everyone experiences sexuality differently, and that is totally cool. The first time I came out to someone, they said, no, you're not gay. And I went, oh, I think I am. Yeah, so that, you know, just because you don't experience your sexuality or gender the same way that other people do, that doesn't mean you're not queer, and that it's okay to ask questions.
Yeah, I think on top of that too, I'd say it's okay to just talk about it as well. I think I've learnt so much about myself and others just by talking about it, especially if you feel safe and comfortable with the person. Yeah.